Living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
In the United States, distraction while driving contributes to 16% of all fatal crashes and more than 1,000 injuries a year. Distracted driving is more than teens madly texting while cruising down the road. Distracted driving is anyone of any age driving while doing any activity that takes attention away from driving. Learn about the dangers of distracted driving in this edition of Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. I'm Beth Brown, your host. Stay tuned. Welcome back. My first guest this morning joins us from AAA. Welcome to Heidi.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Can we just start out, Heidi, by talking about the prevalence of distracted driving?
Sure. So distracted driving is anything that takes your attention away from driving. And it can be something as simple as talking to the passenger next to you or reaching behind you to grab something from your car. Looking at your phone is a visual distraction because it takes your eyes off the road. Something like texting is a manual distraction because it takes your hands off of the steering wheel. Mm-hmm. And then also there's a cognitive distraction, which is where your mind wanders and you're not focused on driving.
Okay, sure. And you know, cars these days have a lot more features than they used to. A lot of technology is now being added to those cars. You can now send text messages and do hands-free cell phone use. Is that a good thing, or is that also potentially a problem when it comes to distracted driving? You
know, that's something that AAA has been working on in a multi-year study. And what they found is that those in-vehicle type of features are actually more distracting than a handheld device or a hands-free device. What happens is that people are concentrating on the in-vehicle technology, and it takes an average of about 30 seconds for them to then refocus on the road.
Wow, okay. So, and you mentioned earlier the cognitive distraction. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So a cognitive distraction is anything that takes your mind off the road. If you're driving and you happen to miss your exit, which I think we all probably unfortunately have done from time to time, that is a cognitive distraction. And we need to be really cognizant of that and be focused on what we're doing. And then those in-vehicle technologies are cognitive distractions as well, because you're focused on what that in-vehicle technology is and you're not focused on the road.
Okay, sure. And now when we think of distracted driving, lots of times we think of cell phones, and they're so prevalent now. Is that a big one for distracted driving?
You know, distracted driving can be any type of distraction, but cell phones are the most prevalent type of distracted driving. If you think about it, it takes about 5 seconds to either read or send a text. And in those 5 seconds, if you're traveling 55 miles an hour, you've traveled the entire length of a football field with virtually your eyes closed. So that's really scary when you think about it that way.
Yeah, it is. And you know, teens have basically not known a life without cell phones. Are they a big part when it comes to cell phones and distracted driving?
Absolutely. You know, as a parent of teenagers, this is really something that I live with every day, and it's a real fear. We live in this age of connectiveness, and with that, kids are always on their phone. They're also battling the draw of Snapchat and apps such as that. Yep. So it's a real issue. In fact, of teen deaths on highways, distracted driving is a #1 cause, and 6 out of 10 crashes that are moderate to severe with teens involve distracted driving as well.
Wow, gosh, that is sad. So what about groups of folks more around our age?
Sure. So the other infracting group is young millennials. We're around our age is more minimal, and then seniors are actually one of the safest driving groups.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah. Except for, I know that with some of the older folks, that some of that technology is new to them. Do they struggle with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the one in the senior demographic. When you're looking at those in-vehicle technologies, we recommend that seniors really know how to understand how to use those systems, because it does impede their cognitive ability when they're trying to do that as well as drive. In fact, we really recommend that with those in-vehicle technologies, people only use them for emergency situations.
Okay, and that's good advice. So when you think about, I think most people understand that distracted driving is not a good thing, that you should be paying attention to the road. But why do you think it's still something that happens? So cell phones, for example, why are people still texting and driving when they know it's not safe?
You know, we live in this era of connectiveness, and we feel obligated to return every text and to respond to every Facebook comment. And really what we need to do when we're driving is silence our phone. And if we can't do that, we need to put it in a space where we cannot have access to it so that we don't have that draw. Because really when it comes down to it, any text message, email, or Facebook post is not worth your safety or the safety of anyone else on the road.
Okay, great. That's great advice. And then two, I know I have been one also where all of a sudden I'm on autopilot because I've been on that road or I know where I'm going. What's advice for folks who maybe are getting caught up in that cognitive distraction where they're just letting their mind go?
You know, it's really hard to do that, especially in areas like Montana where we have so many highway miles. It's important to remind yourself to be focused on what's in front of you and to be actively driving and take that responsibility.
Okay, so it's just being conscientious of what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You got to snap out of it.
Yeah, you got to snap out of it.
Okay, perfect, Heidi. Thank you so much. That's a lot of great information
Thank
and
you.
good advice. As we head to break, I want to thank Heidi for the great information. Up next, we're going to hear about JC Good, a victim of distracted driving. Please stay with us. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. JC Good became a victim of distracted driving when she was just starting life. Her story serves to let people know that it's not okay to drive distracted and that taking your focus off the road for even a few seconds can have a huge impact on the lives of others.
So the date was May 18th of 2008, and it was my college graduation morning. Everything I had always worked for, and real life was right around the corner, and I had a job with Habitat for Humanity, and I was so excited to really finally be starting life. And my parents and I just had this easy hour-and-a-half drive to get home, and we got about halfway home, and we came to a green light. We were going south, one lane each direction, 45 miles an hour, really easy road, and we came to this green light. At the same time, an 18-wheeler came to the green light just opposite us. And at the same time, there was an 18-year-old young man on the intersecting road who came to a red light, but he was just talking on his phone and never even saw the red light. He turned left into the intersection, and the tractor trailer swerved to try and miss him, but swerved in the oncoming lane of traffic and hit our car head on. Both my parents were killed, dead, pronounced dead on the scene. And I was on the brink of death and remained that way for months. My parents were just such wonderful people. Just always trying to do good for the world, helping in soup kitchens, helping Boy Scouts earn their merit badges, just always busy trying to do something to make the world a little bit better place. My mom was the awesome 8th grade English teacher and so many students' favorite teacher. I'm in touch with many of them. And this happened on Sunday, May 18th, and the next day was Monday, May 19th. And on that day, 313-year-old kids came to school to learn that Mrs. Good had a substitute teacher because she was dead. I know the school had to bring in extra guidance counselors. Those kids all had to go home to get support from their parents and their loved ones. I just got to speak at the school where my mom taught. That the students she had in 2008 in 8th grade are now seniors. And I never thought I would hug so many crying 18-year-olds, that it's still impacting their lives today, that they just miss, so many of them said, I miss her smiling face so much, that she was always smiling, and it's still impacting their lives. My injuries were immense. I had 2 broken feet, a broken wrist, broken collarbone, broken tibia, broken fibula, shattered pelvis, lacerated liver, partially collapsed lungs, damaged carotid arteries, and a traumatic brain injury. I was given, I believe the neurologist gave me a 10% chance of surviving that night. And I just kept hanging on. There was no real explanation for what brought me through, but I just kept beating all the odds. When I got out of the hospital, I was 22 years old, walked with a cane, could barely walk. I had a buzz cut. People like to stare at people who look different, and I was embarrassed and self-conscious, but I knew there was a story there, and I knew I could hopefully impact people if they met a real person who's been impacted by this. And wearing this, I added this sign, and wearing this sign gets me stopped on the street very often. And I just hope that for some of those people, meeting a real person impacted by cell phones on the road can hopefully change just one. I just want to change their behavior. 6 months after I'd gotten out of the hospital, and I had been reading about the crash and learning what had happened because I just needed to know everything. I thought I had been driving. I thought I did this to myself and to my parents, but as I learned, my dad had been driving, hadn't done anything wrong. But as I read and learned everything that happened, I also learned that there are no criminal charges against either of the other drivers because it happened in Pennsylvania, where there are no laws regarding cell phones and driving, so the judge didn't even try and prosecute the other drivers. And I was absolutely furious. I just wanted Pennsylvania to be on track, be ahead of the curve even in getting a law against this, so that it's illegal to kill someone if you're doing something we know is dangerous. So I just told my story at a press conference in the state capital of Harrisburg, just trying to get a law passed. And things just kept getting bigger and bigger, from being with the Secretary General at the United Nations to being on Oprah, getting to do all of these awesome experiences and just going wherever I can to try and stop this horrible pain that it's 100% preventable from entering anyone else's life. Being an advocate on this issue is the only way I know how to cope with my parents' deaths. I'm just trying to give some kind of meaning to their deaths because they're not dead, so that that kid could have a conversation. And I just need to give them meaning, and that's why I'm doing the work I'm doing, to try and stop this pain from entering anyone else's life. It's 100% preventable, and it just does not need to be happening. Strict laws that are enforced need to be in place in every single state. If we can get the Bluetooth out of the car, it would be awesome. If we can just pay attention to driving when we're driving, that's what needs to happen. And laws aren't the entire solution. They're a step in the right direction, but it needs to come with the education so that we can make the cultural change and make it socially unacceptable to be talking on the phone. That if you pick up the phone in your home and someone says, "Oh, I just wanted to catch up on my way to the grocery store," just hang up the phone immediately and tell them to drive. That is just not okay, something that's not okay to do. And, we're kind of starting to get there with drunk driving. It's not cool to go out and get wasted and get behind the wheel of a car, and your friends don't let you do it, and cell phones need to be the exact same thing. That is just not okay to do.
Unfortunately, JC's story is one of many, but hopefully her words can serve as a reminder for us whenever we think of doing something behind the wheel besides driving. We'll be right back after the break. 14 states, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, Guam, and the U.S. Virgin Islands prohibit all drivers from using handheld cell phones while driving. Montana has no ban, and Wyoming bans all drivers from texting. No state bans all cell phones for all drivers. While there are no statewide bans in Montana, several Montana cities have banned cell phone use or elements of cell phone use, such as texting. With me now is Officer John Cook with the Helena Police Department to talk about distracted driving. Thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show.
We appreciate you being here. So in the video we just watched, that takes place in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania, like Montana, does not have a ban on cell phone use while driving. Some laws have become nationwide, like seatbelts, for example, but so far cell phones is not something the U.S. government has really tackled or taken on. What are your thoughts about that? Do you think that's something that could be coming down the road?
Most traffic violations or traffic codes are going to be up to the local, state, or local governments to enforce or come up with those individual laws.
Okay. And so when I think of distracted driving, and we talked about this a little bit with Heidi, my mind first goes to cell phones. Are there fines if you're using a cell phone while you're driving?
Yeah, if you're stopped by a Helena City police officer and you get a citation, you're looking at possibly a $105 fine.
Wow, okay. And so that's a city law. And so as we mentioned, Montana has no ban against cell phone use. And so what happens then if someone causes an accident because they were on their cell phone and someone gets hurt, or worse, they cause someone to die? What happens to that person?
Well, we're going to invest each traffic accident basically the same way. We're looking for statements, we're looking for evidence. If we have enough information that distracted driving was a factor, they could look at some specific charges other than just the city ordinance. They may look at a reckless driving type of citation, or if somebody dies, maybe even a vehicular homicide type of, or negligent homicide type of charge.
Okay. How many accidents do you think are caused in Helena because someone is on their cell phone?
As far as actual stats, it's going to be hard for me to give a specific number.
Okay.
What I can tell you is traffic crashes in Helena is a very common occurrence, and we suspect that distracted driving is probably involved in more than we know.
Okay. And because those laws differ from city to city, depending on where you are, how can someone find out what that city's law is when it comes to using a cell phone?
It's pretty easy to research individual city ordinances. Usually that stuff is going to be available on their website. Most cities have them. But a good rule of thumb to follow is if cell phones or electronic devices are not allowed, just don't be using a handheld cell phone or electronic device in that city.
Okay, and we talked to Heidi about the fact that teens use cell phones a lot. Is that something that you've personally seen in your day-to-day work, that teens are more likely to be on a cell phone than older drivers?
Now it seems like everybody has a cell phone.
Sure.
But yeah, teen drivers, they're going to be a little bit more inexperienced in vehicles anyways. And if anybody who needs to pay more attention to the roadway, it's going to be teens. And yeah, unfortunately, we do come across situations where distracted driving does lead to accidents.
Okay. And if someone does cause an accident because they were on their cell phone or some other kind of distracted driving, what should that person do?
Well, hopefully you've called the police. The obvious is make sure that if there's any injuries, we know about it right away, and that person should relay that information to the dispatcher. And if you suspect that distracted driving was a factor, let the responding officer know as soon as possible, and he's going to conduct an investigation, which includes trying to get statements, trying to find people who may have witnessed that or wherever that information came from.
Okay, great. And since cell phones are so ingrained in our day-to-day lives, have you seen a shift in what main causes are for accidents? Is distracted driving on the rise for a cause, or are there still some causes that have been around that continue to be a problem?
Again, I'm not going to go into any stats. I'm sure there's a lot of research that has gone into a lot of this stuff. But in Montana, we still have environmental factors because, as far as icy roads and just long distances that individuals have to travel, there's always going to be those environmental factors, also wildlife, and there's impaired driving as well. Those things have always been there as long as I've been in law enforcement, but like we mentioned earlier, just people are using cell phones more and more, and I'm sure that is something that's definitely on the rise. I just don't have any stats to necessarily show that.
Okay. Do you know of any statewide laws that are maybe in the works right now to address distracted driving and cell phones?
I'm sure the conversations come up, but I don't know about any conversations on the state level with legislators where that's been talked about.
Okay. So if a city does ban cell phone use while driving, what does that mean for then when you stop at a stoplight? Can you still text or talk on the phone if you're stopped?
No, in the city of Helena, if you're still operating a motor vehicle even when you're stopped at a stop sign or a stoplight. Therefore, you're not going to be allowed to use your cell phone, just like if you were driving a car.
Okay, so you could still get pulled over for that?
Yes.
Okay. And then with everything that a law enforcement officer has in his or her vehicle with radios and phones and laptops, what are you as a police officer told when it comes to distracted driving?
Our policies and procedures for the Helena Police Department, they're basically in line with the city ordinance that everybody should obey as far as using a cell phone in a vehicle. Unless there's an emergency, we're not going to be using our cell phones either.
Okay. All right, great, Officer Cook. Thank you so much for all that information. We're out of time this week. I want to thank my guests, Heidi O'Brien and Officer Cook, for all their great information. Accidents caused by distracted driving are among the leading causes of injuries and death in the United States. Cell phone use is only one form of distracted driving, so please take care of potential distractions before you get behind the wheel. And as always, stay fit, stay well, and stay healthy for life with Healthy Living for Life. See you next week.
Healthy Living for Life is brought to you by Mountain Pacific Quality Health. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future programs, visit our website at mpqhf.org or call us at 406-443-4020. You can also catch us on YouTube by visiting our website and clicking on the YouTube icon. Special thanks to Fire Tower Coffee House and Roasters. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions.